What's up, guys? Coming at you from Shenzhen, at least for now. I'm on my way to the airport to go to Chongqing to run a few personal errands. I thought I'd fire up the camera because I haven't uploaded a video in a while and kind of just have a quick chat. I am going to Chongqing for personal reasons, a few errands, but while I'm there, I'm going to be meeting up with Alex from Reportify Media. He's somebody I've been making content with for quite a while, on and off, different live streams and stuff like that since 2020. It's gotten to the point where I feel like I know him so well that I've got to remind myself that I've never met him face to face. So I'll bring you along for that little journey. And in the meantime, I thought I would just, like I said, fire up the camera and have a quick chat. I haven't uploaded a video in a while, and a lot has changed since my last video with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And I haven't really made any videos on that topic because while covering China, which I know very well, I've been living here for 15 years, I've been putting a considerable amount of time into looking at the claims made against China and investigating them. But I also recognize and I see a lot of people saying some things with great confidence about China when they clearly know nothing about China. I didn't want to be that guy on Ukraine. Now, on Twitter, I dabble in it a little bit more. I feel like it's the kind of a format where you can put some ideas out there, you can see the responses, you can kind of start to get into it. And for me, the fascination and the interest, other than obviously the tragedy behind the fact that so many people are suffering because of this, is a few different things. One is hypocrisy. I'm fascinated by the hypocrisy that's been going on in terms of ordinary Russians being targeted because of this invasion. Ordinary Russians being expected to condemn Putin and Russia, even if they don't want to speak up on the topic, even if they don't want to talk about this, they don't want to get into politics. There was a conductor, I believe it was in Germany, who was given 24 hours to condemn Russia and Putin or lose his job. And there were other ordinary Russians who were put under these kinds of constraints. It happens on a country level as well. You had countries, the US telling different countries that they must condemn Russia and they must condemn Putin. And when they don't, there are usually consequences. When Bangladesh refused to do it, Lithuania refused to ship the 500,000 vaccines that were expected to ship from Lithuania to Bangladesh. And for me, it's just really remarkable that this is all of a sudden an obligation for people. It was never an obligation when Western-led wars or Western war crimes came up. There was never an obligation on countries by even rivals to the US to say, you must condemn the US, we must hear you say it. But all of a sudden this is some sort of an obligation, and I can understand why countries, even if they don't agree with Russia's invasion, would be saying, no, you don't have the moral high ground to put these kinds of obligations on us. I mean, who are you to tell us that we need to do this for you? Now, in the case of China not expressly condemning Russia, there's more going on there, obviously, because they are one of the parties who is most likely to be someone who could stand in the middle and negotiate peace if ever we get to that point. And by starting to pick sides or condemn one side or the other, it may not be a really good idea if we want to maintain a neutral party who can go in and just talk to both sides and bring it together, as the US actually has asked China to do. Or sorry, it wasn't the US, I think it was the EU who was asking China to step in as a mediator. The other interest for me is the double standard on censorship. You saw RT channels, a lot of brilliant shows, all taken off of YouTube, taken off of the airwaves in a lot of Western countries. And it's kind of a real mask-off moment. And it's censorship for reasons far less than when you see censorship in other countries. For example, I covered the censorship of Facebook in China when it was blocked because they refused to take down these groups where rioters and terrorists were organizing in. You could see the political favoritism from Facebook also, because obviously later on, as we learned, what was it, a year ago, 2 years ago, when there was a trending hashtag for Resign Modi in India, Facebook censored that. So they will do it for countries that they're geopolitically friendly with. But anyways, that was an example of censorship for national security reasons. Now, I'm sure China censors things for reasons far less than that, but that's an example of censorship for national security. What you see going on in the West is censorship for the purposes of narrative control. And I feel like that's a far lower bar than for national security reasons. It also goes to show that they don't really trust their populations with this information. They're afraid that they'll be fooled by Russian propaganda or whatever it may be, or they just want to be able to push their own lies. That's a possibility too. And I can get into that a little bit later in another video, where there's been some really interesting choices of censorship and what kinds of information is being controlled. But it's a complete mask-off moment for people to understand that there isn't really free speech in the West. There isn't really freedom to access any information you want, because when the you-know-what hits the fan, censorship will start. I've mentioned this point before too, that during times of war there are certain pieces of certain democratic freedoms that are suspended. We've seen that throughout history in the UK during World War II and things like that. And this is an example of that. This is not even war on the doorsteps of a lot of these Western countries. Putting this propaganda or putting these censorship mechanisms in place to control the narrative. That's really interesting for me too. It's something I want to talk about a little bit more too, because even though it's not within China-related topics, it overlaps on a lot of the things I've been speaking about what's the true meaning of freedom, what's the true meaning of freedom of information, and all this kind of stuff. And I think it's important to look across topics on these kinds of subjects, because you can start to see similar tactics being recycled over and over again, looking for trends, and therefore better equipping yourself to be able to identify it in the future. So I think that's a really specifically important topic, because a lot of people in China, they know there's a transparent censorship. And by that I mean, you type in google.com or youtube.com without a VPN, it's blocked, you can't see it. You can understand here more clearly that there are certain perspectives being blocked. If I want to hear what the other side is saying, maybe I got to hop onto a VPN. In the West, there's a lot of people who really truly believe they have freedom of speech and freedom of access to information in a meaningful way, far more meaningful than they actually have in reality. And I think that's far more dangerous, because then people are led to believe that they have come to the conclusions, thoughts, and feelings based on processing all of the available information and making up their mind on their own. And that's clearly not the case. It was far more covert before. They did this in very interesting ways, through shadow banning, through boosting certain pieces of information, burying other pieces of information. And this is kind of like for somebody who's been trying to illustrate propaganda in the West, it's kind of a breathe easy moment where you say, okay, the mask has fully come off now. I don't really need to say anything about this anymore. It's right in front of people's faces, and if they can't understand it now, there's little you can do to further add to the conversation to finally make them see it. And that's part of the reason I haven't really made a video about it too. But, I think it is important to distill some of this information and put it together as a record, just to make it really clear, because people have short memories. And I think people are going to have short memories about the censorship that's going on right now, and people are going to have short memories about the things that they've been told they should care about. They should care about invasions. They should care about civilian casualties. But the outrage isn't there when we learn about these kinds of things when the West is doing it. When you hear that Daniel Hale told us that 9 out of 10 drone strikes kill civilians. Daniel Hale is in prison for telling us that information. So a lot of the people who don't even know who Daniel Hale's name is suddenly have been told that this is something you need to care about. Now, when this is over and the West starts doing these things again, they're going to forget that, oh, hold on a second, these are the things I'm supposed to care about. And it's really remarkable how well the narrative is controlled in that way. But anyways, guys, I think I'm going to be late for my flight. I got to get to the subway. What I'll do is I'll show you a little bit of the trip. Hopefully I'll put a clip in here of meeting Alex for the first time. But I hope everybody's been doing well, and I will try to get some videos out talking about some of these topics that I've discussed here, and maybe bringing some people in who are far more experienced on the topic of Russia and Ukraine to dig a little bit more deeper into what's actually going on. So hope you guys are doing well once again, and I'll catch you in a bit. Peace.
man.
Finally.
Yeah.
Well, long overdue. We're having a beer together finally.
Cheers,
and the owner of this place treated us to beers and their specialty bread too, which is nice. Craft beer market is a small, close-knit community, so they knew about my brand in Shenzhen. It's called, what is it called? It's called Glass and Plate. So if you guys are ever in Chongqing, give Glass and Plate a try. The bread is really good. But most important, it is great to finally meet you after all these years.
Strange. We've known each other for years, but we've never met.
I had to keep reminding myself that we never met. I was like,
It's like old times.
Yeah. It's like old times, but we actually never had any old times together.
That's great.
It's
Great to
awesome.
see ya.
Great to see you.